This segment is taken from a longer podcast recorded for the Patreon boys. If that sounds like something you fancy, check out the link in the description. Cheers. On the subject of just standing in front of people with your hands down and letting them swing, Jared Cannonier is fighting Kelvin Gastelum. This is a really fun matchup, actually. Both of them coming off losses to the same guy. Both of them coming off losses to Robert Whittaker. Cannonier was booked to fight Paulo Costa for this event, actually, and Costa pulled out due to injury. Gastelum stepped in. Gastelum coming off the loss to Robert Whittaker. Very spirited loss, but probably the best Whittaker's looked in a long time, I thought. Even the Whittaker Cannonier fight, Whittaker was very limited, didn't do an awful lot. He was just, well, I mean, he landed a lot of blows, but he wasn't showing a lot of looks. Whereas in the Kelvin Gastelum fight, he hit him with just about every punch you can. It took him down, wrestled, guard passed. It was really a consummately excellent performance. And in fairness to Gastelum, in his last couple, he's actually looked to use his wrestling a bit more, which I've really enjoyed. The Ian Heinich one is a great example. And to do that to Ian Heinich, because both of those guys, you'll remember I was creaming my jeans at the thought of that fight. And if you haven't seen it, you probably, I mean, you might have seen like win decision on the, if you're anything like me when I'm feeling like a massive casual, you go and watch all the finishes first. But the Ian Heinich, Kelvin Gastelum fight, I was excited because both of them are very good at countering takedowns, not even stopping takedowns, but just like bailing and rolling out of takedowns. Both of them kings of the Granby. And in fact, I mean, we can get into like semantics here, but the Granby is a roll across the shoulders. Typically, if you're down in the turtle and the guy's on your left side, the Granby is when you bring your left shoulder in and you roll across it. So you roll out looking towards the outside. And the Granby tends to make to break you away. It makes scrambles. If you watch guys who are really good at it in wrestling, they will almost do a flip into it, and then they'll turn back in on their knees to try and take the opponent down. It's basically a reversal, or rather an attempt to get into a scramble in reverse. What Kelvin Gastelum is very good at is what's sometimes called the Peterson or the Fat Man roll. I'm sure there's another name for it, but I can't remember it right now. But it's where you, if the opponent's on your left side again, you catch their right wrist, which is normally in your hip somewhere, keeping you in place while they try and hit you in the head with the other hand or put in a seatbelt or whatever. But you catch their wrist across your body, and then you look into them and roll over your right shoulder. So where the Granby is like a break free and create action that way sort of roll, the Peterson or Fat Man roll, you roll under them and you trap their arm so that they have to roll over you and you come up on top. And it's not common to see it done. You don't see it an awful lot, but Kelvin Gastelum does it in every fight, multiple times a fight. I mean, it just goes to show that, like, if you work on one technique a lot and you get good at it, it'll work. Like, it doesn't matter if it's like the scissor sweep or something like that. I mean, everyone hates the scissor sweep because it stops working at a certain level. But I mean, I saw Jeff Curran scissor sweep people in MMA. He did it to Scott Jorgensen at one point and almost set up a triangle off it. And Scott Jorgensen had decent base on top. But yeah, Gastelum with those Katamari rolls, just amazing. You watch him against Neil Magny. Tim Kennedy's the best one, I think, because the Tim Kennedy fight sort of set the precedent for him at middleweight. You know, he was just going to put the fucking pace on these dudes, and he's going to put the pace on these dudes when they were trying to hold him down. He won't hold guard. He'll push the guy past his guard to side control so that he can belly down. And that's the real difference. Like, if you watch his tough fights, he's still going belly down and rolling dudes over. He will give up bad position and then come out on top. It's really interesting because, like, jiu-jitsu will not reward sweeps from the turtle, and that's that's probably a huge factor in how the game is played. Eduardo Tellez was the turtle master in jiu-jitsu, and even he had to like stop doing it because if he did sweep people successfully from the turtle, they wouldn't give him points because it's not from a guard. Whereas in MMA, the only thing that matters is results. And of course, if you go to your hands and knees in MMA, it's a lot more useful because you can just get up. And there isn't a lot of point to just get up in jiu-jitsu. Like, if you haven't watched the Robert Whittaker fight recently, Robert Whittaker takes him down, has him dead to rights, flat in half guard, with the crossface and the head control and the underhook. And he could have passed effortlessly. It was the position that GSP always gets, the no hands pass. He could have passed, and he didn't. He kept the half guard for as long as possible because Kelvin Gaston was like, "Please pass me." He was opening his legs and be like, "Please pass me," because the moment you let go of that leg and stop sitting on his leg, he's going to turn to his belly and stand up or roll through. And the Tim Kennedy fight is such a brilliant example of that. Just belly down, hands and knees, works his way up. When Tim Kennedy tries to drive him back down to the mat, he catches the wrist and rolls through. And he absolutely exhausted Tim Kennedy. And remember how easily Tim Kennedy held down Michael Bisping, who's pretty good at like traditional scrambling up from the guard. Cannonier, the ground game has always been a massive weakness, which is really interesting because Gastelum's been taking everyone down lately. But it's not. I mean, I will. It's probably a weakness. We haven't seen an awful lot of it since he came down. But when he was fighting at light heavyweight, basically, like when everyone was super hot on Glover Teixeira and his striking, even though it's like two things done over and over again. Jared Cannonier was slapping the shit out of him on the feet, and then as soon as Glover Teixeira tapped his knee, he'd fall on his back, and Glover Teixeira would go into half guard and either effortlessly pass him out or just hold him down in half guard. And Cannonier couldn't do anything. He always had really good striking, or at least really good hands and counters, and the wrestling always let him down. Like Ion Kutalaba, he let Ion Kutalaba hit him in the face, and he's just screaming at him. But like if he touched his legs, he'd get him to the mat effortlessly. So when he came down to middleweight, it was really interesting because he was able to stop guys who are very good takedown artists in that division from taking him down. Like Jack Hermansson, not a powerhouse wrestler, but a very good technical wrestler. If he can't get you down with the double leg, or he times his double legs quite well, can't get you down with that, he'll switch off to the high crotch, try and crack you down and make a real technical scrambly battle out of it. And he couldn't get anything going against Jared Cannonier. Cannonier was on point. And Hermansson has this thing where, like, if he can start applying the volume, it really works well. But if he gets his confidence shaken a bit, it all sort of falls apart. That idea where like the game is more than the sum of its parts. If you take away bits of it and it doesn't work together, the bits on their own really aren't useful at all. So he was like not really able to strike with Cannonier, and then he'd run in from far away, and Cannonier would hit him with a counter. And that's really what we built most of our stuff on, that and the Dave Branch one. Because Dave Branch is, again, a smothering wrestler, and he couldn't really get Cannonier off his feet. And that was pretty much a straight wrestling match at several points. And the weight cut, the change in weight class is important in that, but it's also important to mention that Cannonier was a really weird case because he was up in Alaska working at the airport full time when he took a fight with Glover Teixeira, one of the top 5 light heavyweights in the world. But now I think he still lives in Alaska, but he's working with the MMA lab down in Arizona. He's getting down there regularly, training with world-class sparring partners and trainers, and it seems to have really helped. Now, on the feet, you'd probably give the edge in hand speed to Kelvin Gastelum, but I would say he looked slower in his last couple, Heinich and Whittaker. The Whittaker one is interesting because, like, speed is really just binary in fights. A lot of qualities are binary. You're either the stronger or the weaker, you're the faster or the slower. You can be really, really fast, but if you turn up and the other guy's faster, you have to go, okay, I'm slow here. I'm the slow guy. You don't get points for being very, very fast compared to most of the population because you're only in there with one dude. So that can sort of happen. Like, Kelvin Gastelum could be as quick as he's ever been, and he just looked bad because Whittaker was faster. But he did look slow on the draw a lot of the time in that fight, coming up second. And Whittaker was doing a great job of, my new phrase, first and third, but he was doing great at like scoring the jab and getting, because my main concern for Whittaker in that fight was getting caught on the return. Because that left hand from Gastelum, he can loop it slightly, he can step to the left slightly and throw it straight, but across your chin. He can just throw it straight back, and it catches so many guys out. Like, I think it was Bisping, threw his right hand, got caught with the left hand on the same side, went out, I think the same thing happened to Belfort. Obviously, 2 old dudes, not in the same place in their career as Whittaker in their athletic prime, but that was a concern. I was like, if Whittaker gets in with his jab and it just sort of stands there, he's getting hit with the left hand back. But he did a great job of standing in front of Gastelum. Like, he'd enter with his jab, stand there, and he'd do a really good job of slipping or shoulder rolling and coming back with a counter. Did a great job of using his left hook to close the door. I mean, using a left hook against a southpaw is trickier anyway, so that was really impressive too. Really liked that Whittaker worked him up and down with the kicks. That's the other thing about Gastelum. Cannonier was never a big kicker, but we've seen him use them successfully when he needed to in recent years. Like against Anderson Silva, he went straight after the leg because how do you slow someone down? You go after the legs. Um, and especially if it's like a good striker and they're probably not going to take you down. Gastelum really only the odd stumpy leg kick. I've seen him use the classic Rafael Cordero open side body kick, but very seldom. You know, what he does is with his hands for the most part. And that can put you in a disadvantage because even if you're not the fastest kicker in the world, throwing kicks into the arm of your opponent when you're southpaw versus orthodox or orthodox versus southpaw, throwing kicks into that arm keeps them honest, keeps them from slipping down, trying to get outside your hand or duck down, keeps that hand there so that they can't throw it as readily. It just makes people hesitate. And even if you've got the slowest kicks in the world, you can do that. But Whittaker was willing to kick, and he was showing these kicks and keeping Gastelum's hand at home. And Gastelum wasn't really able to do the same to Whittaker. He was able to throw whenever he wanted to. So you got that there. You know, Gastelum probably has the speed in the hands, very good at closing quickly, but Cannonier good on the counter, good with his own hands. Gastelum doesn't really like to kick. Cannonier will kick, but will he kick readily against a takedown artist? Will, you know, and as much as Gastelum isn't really a takedown artist, you know, you don't think, oh, Kelvin Gastelum, yeah, 60 takedowns in his UFC career. He has been going to it a lot more recently. Someone put up the stats on Reddit. It was like just like he'd attempted more in his last 2-3 fights than he had in the 6 before that. You know, Ian Heinisch is a hard guy to take down and keep down, and he was going to them against Ian Heinisch. And it seems unlikely that Cannonier is going to be pursuing takedowns. You know, I don't want to write it off because he's working with a really good team, and clearly he's trying to round out his game. But it seems like a wasted task against someone like Gastelum when they're just so good at getting up, unless you can hold them down in the half guard. And again, I don't know if he could stop him coming up on a single very easily. It's an interesting fight, but like it seems like Gastelum has the boxing and the ground game, or rather the wrestling, to win this fight in. And while Cannonier seems more willing to kick and the better, you know, the more powerful kicker, it seems like he can win the fight possibly in the boxing and in the kicking and the use of them together. But really, when you get into the wrestling, there's not a lot of a point in him trying to take Gastelum down, particularly because he'll tire himself out and Gastelum will try and arm roll him, or Peterson, or Fat Man, or whatever you want to call it. Arm roll, that was the other name. But Gastelum. But having said that, you know, the clinch has been a really useful weapon against Gastelum, and you saw Whittaker do it occasionally, but you saw Darren Till do it masterfully. You know, anytime Gastelum's storming in, duck into the clinch, tie him up, hit him with a knee if you can. You know, you might not be able to, but the clinching every time he tries to throw will tire him out, at least mentally. And if you can hit him with a knee in the meantime or an elbow on the break, that'll also tire him out. He has the hand speed that you should be wary of, scared of. But if you duck in on him and smother him, he can't throw more than one punch. You know, you're countering the step, as we always say with like people like Cody Garbrandt, when they're very, very quick. Back it up, let them step, counter the step, duck in on the clinch, you know, and smother him. But yeah, I don't know if you'll see much of that from Cannonier. Cannonier, like, Kelvin Gastelum's a bit of an open book. You know, we're still seeing him like adjust things, and there's always been this feeling of it's kind of like Darren Till, where you feel like he's better than his record or recent record says he is, and you're just sort of waiting for him to put together a few wins. Cannonier is very much still a bit of an enigma. He's just come down from, well, I say just, it's a couple of years now, but he might as well have just come down from light heavyweight. 2018 gets smoked by Dominic Reyes, comes down to middleweight, reinvents himself 6 months later, fights David Branch, looks incredible, but again, finishes him 30 seconds into the second round, finishes Anderson Silva in the first round, finishes Jack Hermansson 30 seconds into the second round. You know, you're not getting a full view of what Cannonier really is. The longest he's gone is the Robert Whittaker one, where, you know, he did keep his, you know, he kept his power into the end of the fight. He clipped Robert Whittaker with a couple of good ones late in that fight. But, yeah, you weren't blowing, like, you didn't get the sense that he could offer anything new. And once that fear of his hands was gone from Robert Whittaker, he wasn't really It didn't seem like the same presence that he was against Hermanson and Branch. So a good fight nonetheless. I'm looking forward to that one.